In a recent operation, the legendary Magyar Birds UAV unit once again proved its reputation on the front lines. Their FPV drones successfully tracked and thwarted the movement of a Russian attack group using motorcycles as a means of tactical mobility across the battlefield. Footage showed a small convoy of Russian motorcycles casually passing through the open road, unaware that they had entered the drone operator's line of sight. However, the calm was short-lived as the high speed of the motorcycles, usually relied on to avoid detection, was no match for the precision of the Ukrainian FPV kamikaze UAVs. The Magyar Birds operators launched a precision attack using their FPV drones. Once the drones locked onto their targets, they immediately dived with deadly accuracy. The explosion immediately hit one of the motorcycles, creating panic among the other riders, while the follow-up attack ensured they had no room to continue their penetration. The enemy's mobility, which they relied on through two-wheeled vehicles, turned into a fatal disadvantage. This attack was not just a tactical strike, but also a strategic message. Any lapse in vigilance would be immediately exploited by Ukrainian FPV operators. The Russian tactic of attempting to use motorcycles to mitigate losses to armored vehicles has proven fragile, and rapid mobility no longer guarantees safety when the skies are dominated by the eagle eyes of UAVs. The Magyar Birds not only halted enemy movement, but also confirmed their reputation as a real threat to any enemy movement on the front lines. This operation added another milestone to the long list of successes of the Ukrainian UAV force, which continues to strengthen their unmanned aerial dominance in modern combat, while simultaneously demoralizing Russian strike forces on the battlefield. From the Sumy direction, the Ukrainian command has executed a deadly plan to not only stop the Russian offensive into Sumy Oblast once and for all, but also to destroy as many enemy forces as possible. After retaking the initiative and starting to dictate the pace, the Ukrainians began to slowly finish off the Russian units left in the region without supplies. Russian lines in the Sumy sector are collapsing at a rapid pace, with Ukraine inflicting one of the most decisive defeats on the Russian offensive since the war began. The chain reaction started when Ukrainian forces destroyed a key bridge near Yunakivka, and this bridge was critical for Russian mobility, serving as a potential route for flanking Ukrainian positions. With it gone, Russian troops found themselves trapped in unfavorable positions, stripped of the ability to maneuver and flank or encircle Ukrainian forces. Since the bridge's destruction, Russian units have failed to make any meaningful advances in the area, leaving them exposed and increasingly vulnerable to Ukrainian countermeasures. The second factor accelerating the Russian collapse is Ukraine's strict fire control over Russian ground lines of communication. Every Russian supply route is under lethal Ukrainian surveillance, followed by precise artillery, drones, and aviation strikes. With Russians forced to move on foot and lacking armored vehicles to protect their advances, reinforcement and resupply became nearly impossible. This allowed the Ukrainians to effectively split the Russian force grouping in two. The Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that fire control zones now effectively block Russian logistics, evacuation routes, and reinforcement corridors, leaving isolated Russian positions to shrink under relentless pressure. Destruction of critical Russian bridge near Yunakivka, while fire control zones making supply and evacuation impossible. Precision artillery and FPV drones targeting regrouping attempts, and Russian forces split into smaller, isolated groupings. In response to the worsening situation, the Russian High Command attempted to stabilize the front by dispatching a high-ranking general to reorganize defenses, but this plan backfired quickly. Ukrainian reconnaissance spotted and ambushed the Russian command column moving through Kursk Oblast, destroying multiple vehicles and striking senior leadership. Among those targeted was Lieutenant General Abachev, who was gravely wounded in the attack, and intelligence sources confirmed that he was evacuated to Moscow, where doctors amputated his arm and leg. The loss of such a high-ranking officer in the middle of a crisis further cripples Russia's ability to coordinate, delaying its already faltering attempts to restore cohesion to the front line. With the smaller Russian foothold in the northwest steadily collapsing, Ukrainian forces can soon start pressing toward the larger concentration of Russian troops northeast of Sumy, striking from multiple flanks. Russian military bloggers admit that the loss of Kindrativka marked a turning point as Ukrainian units are pressing deeper, spearheaded by special operation forces and backed by waves of FPV drones that shred Russian positions and prevent any attempt to regroup. Geolocated Ukrainian footage confirms operations by at least a dozen different units, including artillery crews executing pinpoint strikes, grenade launcher operators engaging entrenched enemy troops, and soldiers conducting both precision attacks and disruptive raids behind enemy lines. Fighting around Oleksivka has intensified, with Russian analysts conceding that Ukrainian advances are impossible to halt under current conditions. Artillery crews carrying out pinpoint strikes, grenade launcher teams targeting entrenched troops, FPV drone operators eliminating Russian positions, and special forces conducting disruptive raids behind enemy lines. Meanwhile, reports indicate that Russian logistics have completely broken down, with food and ammunition unable to reach frontline troops, with supply drops from Russian drones rare and in between. In just the northwest sector, Russian losses in the last days are estimated at 334 killed and more than 550 wounded, a catastrophic toll that has gutted local combat effectiveness. Overall, Ukraine has successfully halted the Russian offensive in Sumy and reversed the momentum, as the combination of cutting supply lines, destroying critical infrastructure, and relentlessly targeting reinforcement attempts dismantled the Russian efforts piece by piece. With their ground lines of communication in ruins and their command structure shaken by leadership losses, Russian troops are being pushed into a purely defensive posture.